So in our last episode, we were building on the principle of needing new wineskins by discussing the need for vision to be shared by as many members as possible. And then to do this, we as leaders need to have a system-wide approach in our thinking. We will now dig a bit deeper by explaining what a systems-wide approach looks like. Is it inevitable that the structures decline and that the culture of churches need to periodically change? Is it inevitable that the wineskins will eventually no longer be able to adapt to the new wine? Well, while it may not be inevitable, if a church or organization becomes stuck and not willing to change, decline is usually just around the corner. The roots of decline can often be traced back to some sort of faulty thinking. These thought patterns are indicators that the existing structures needs renewal or maybe a complete overhaul. Just as individuals need the Holy Spirit to renew their minds, so churches and groups of believers need divine intervention in order to renew their wrong thinking. So let me provide a few examples of wrong thinking as a group. If you're following along in the coaching guide and notes, we are on page 13 to 16 at this point. See, the first type of wrong thinking is to focus on position, not purpose. In this scenario, people only see tasks that need to be done, not the overall purpose of the ministry and where it is heading. This results in small thinking and eventual lack of focus. Another example would be the attitude that everyone else is to blame. Instead of taking ownership of the problem, in the ministry, others are blamed. Everything and everyone else is the fault that the organization is not where it's at. This is usually a result of focusing on one's own position and personal aspirations. A third example of wrong thinking as a group originates with a false need to take charge. This happens when leaders disguise their own reactions as actually being proactive. The reality is that they may think they are taking charge when actually they're just reacting. Reacting always blames others. Being proactive sees how we may have contributed to our own problems and that of the group. Being fixated on the past is another hindrance to moving forward. Ministries are stunted in their growth by becoming locked in a cycle of the past and not moving beyond just short-term events to aspiring to long-term goals. Ironically, the more successful a ministry has been, likely that this is going to happen. See, most organizations, churches included, don't usually have systems which are designed to help them see the small changes that are slowly taking them off course. This is the example of organizations not recognizing slow changes. As the frog in the boiling water, that does not notice, he doesn't notice the temperature of the water slowly increasing. So organizations do not see how they are changing until often it's too late. To see this gradual change, leadership must slow down and learn to become reflective. It is often the case that groups do not learn from experience. Though experience has the potential to be the best teacher, the fact of the matter is that organizations may not necessarily learn from past experiences. This often occurs because we usually do not experience the consequences of the most important decisions we've made. There's often enough time and space between the cause and effect that we do not learn from past mistakes. And a final example is a case of faulty team dynamics. See, while team ministry is desired in most ministries, the reality is that often serious discussions are avoided, which makes a team approach virtually impossible. See, in this wrong thinking scenario, protecting one's own turf and image is most important. This results in a team not learning or growing and inevitably leads to negative consequences, which affect the whole ministry as they often end up blaming each other. Okay, well, there are 7 examples of how we can be working against the very goals we're trying to achieve, often without even knowing it. Learning to see our ministry as a system is a skill that we as a team of leaders must acquire if we're going to be effective in fulfilling our calling over the long term. But this does not just happen on its own. We must learn how to do this. Seeing our ministry as a complete system means that we also consider how decisions affect every aspect of the ministry. It also means our leadership team begins to think through the effects of change and how it will impact every facet of our ministry. The challenge is that the systems thinking is complex, in a couple ways. First, there's the detailed complexity, where there are many variables and the effects are not so obvious. Second, there's dynamic complexity, which is more common in human relations. In these cases, cause and effect do not seem to be related. We cannot always directly connect the actions we take today with the results. This is why it's not always obvious what changes need to be made, as the consequences of the change may differ in different areas of the organizations, even being unintended. It kind of feel like being in the whack-a-mole game, if you remember that. This type of complexity is what occurs in many churches.
This series is based upon our MCNet coaching and ministry guides. There are basically 2 parts to the series, 12 episodes that cover the 5 sections of the coaching guide and 18 episodes that cover the 8 workshops of the ministry guide. As a team, we have had the opportunity to serve in various parts of the world over the last decades using these materials to equip leaders and coach ministry teams throughout our ministry coaching network. This leadership team coaching in episodes 1 to 12 are intended for the core leadership team and cover big picture issues that affect the whole ministry. Here, issues regarding sharing vision, developing healthy culture, bringing about change, and multiplication strategies are discussed. There's a playbook at the end of each of these first 12 coaching episodes, which serves as a guide to help implement these church health and growth tools. These first 12 episodes then coincide with the ministry team workshops in episodes 13 to 30, which are designed to equip every member as they serve in the body. You can also check out our Christian Leadership Institute training program. This is a unique approach to ministerial training based on a competency-focused mentorship. The free materials for this series, as well as the coaching and ministry guides, are available from the links in the description box below. Just as many others have, we are sure you will find our other Leadership Matters podcast series helpful for you and your ministry.
Peter Senge wrote a book many years ago which has become kind of a classic. And in the 5th discipline, he helps organizations understand systems thinking in fulfilling their purpose or mandate. I found his thoughts helpful in applying some of these gravitational truths to the churches and ministries I have consulted with over the years. So let me offer a few of his thoughts relating to the laws of a system. See, it's important to remember that the term system here refers to any organization, which includes our church or our ministry. I'm aware that the church is unique in many ways, and Jesus' approach to leadership is quite different from what we encounter in the institutions in our society, or it should be anyway. Yet, like my comments on the universality of gravity, I think we can glean some helpful tips from Senge's approach. See if you can identify any of these in your own life or ministry. The first principle is that often today's problems come from yesterday's solutions. This refers to what has been called the law of unintended consequences. The reality is that often what we face in our ministry today can be traced to a problem that we thought we had solved in the past. Kind of like trying to kill a snake under a carpet. Every time you try to hit it, it moves somewhere else. Back to the whack-a-mole approach. So we have to be careful that our solutions to a problem are not just moving the problem to another area of the church or shifting it to another person. This is further complicated by the fact that these problems are often unnoticed, for those who are not solving the problems are different from those who maybe have inherited the problem. Another law of the system is that working harder is not always the answer. At this point, we realize that just putting in more time and effort is not necessarily going to solve the problem. Often intervention in one department can actually create issues in another department, and these can negate the benefits to the whole church. See, implementing aggressive intervention may make us look like we're leading, but it may not be solving the problem which we're trying to deal with. Lots of talk and even lots of activity does not necessarily solve the problem, even if it is well-intentioned. If our church has certain flawed thinking, it may never grow beyond a certain size, even if we preach more, preach longer, more forceful, and so on. A third truism of the system is that things get better before they get worse. The reality is that there is often a time delay between the short-term benefits and the long-term negative consequences. For example, we can take steps to deal with the problem and see short-term benefits, but if the long-term effects are not taken into account, the problem usually returns in a few years. Funny enough, by then someone else is usually in leadership and has to deal with it. So, problem solved. Well, not quite. Different people may be involved, but the issue has remained the same. See, in complex human systems, there's always a way to make things look better in the short term without actually solving the problem. Leadership can do this in order to build their own power base, to look good or to please others. But ultimately, things get worse if the root of the problem has not been dealt with. Another truth is that the easy way is usually not the best way. Often we apply solutions to problems that we are most comfortable with or have used in the past. However, if there has been an easy solution, it likely would have already been implemented. We need to avoid the mentality that, hey, all we need around here is a bigger hammer. Thinking too small is indicated by just pushing harder with familiar solutions while the fundamental problems get worse. Fifth, it is possible for the cure to be worse than the disease. We need to be aware that familiar solutions can actually become addictive and dangerous. For example, alcoholism helps in the short term by helping the drunk forget their problems, but does not really deal with the root problem. These types of false solutions then require more and more of the solution. This actually increases dependency upon a solution that does not work, which is what happens with any addictive behavior. See, often these short-term improvements lead to long-term dependency. It merely shifts the burden and ultimately weakens the ministry and the church, for members do not take ownership and responsibility. See, most members actually prefer that the leaders implement the easy solution, for it is often associated with less commitment on their part, and in the short term creates the illusion of success. The sixth principle is that faster is usually slower. The pace of growth and change is not the same for every ministry or church. Each system has optimal rates of growth. This is determined by many internal and external factors. Faster is not always better. It can actually cause a problem to grow bigger if it is not the right action. The correct response is not no action, but rather the correct action. This is similar to the leader thinking that if only they work harder, they will solve the problem. Another counterintuitive idea is that cause and effect are not closely related. The effect is that obvious external indication that there is a problem. The cause is the underlying reasons responsible for producing the problem. The general assumption that most leaders and members of ministries make is that the cause and effect are closely related in time and space. Yet often what is seen, or the effect, is not easily linked to the cause. Not understanding this can cause us to fix effects without dealing with the real cause. For example, in a developing nation, poverty usually has many reasons related to institutional structures and leaders extracting wealth for themselves, and so just giving more money is often not the solution. Now, it's also true that small changes can produce large results. We must learn to find the places where the smallest change can make the biggest impact. Unfortunately, we often do just the opposite, taking steps to make big change, which produce the least impact. The types of change that makes the most impact are often the least obvious to leadership. There are no rules to determining this, but rather a leader must learn to see underlying issues rather than just events and what is happening out in the open. Change needs to be seen as a process and not just a one-time event. In our next episodes, we'll take more time to discuss change and transition. Another reality of Sengeis is that the time factor can solve dilemmas. Often in ministries we are confronted with a dilemma. These are problems for which it seems there's no good solution. Yet labeling a problem as a dilemma is often due to seeing the big seeing the big picture. If we give ourselves more time, dilemmas often resolve themselves. As with finances, upfront investments take time to produce results. Static thinking means that the leader sees decisions as always an either-or, not inclusive. For example, it is possible to reward individual achievement and have everyone valued. It is possible to allow the equipping gifts to function without undermining the priesthood of all believers. See, few problems are really true dilemmas. Another principle is that dividing the ministry does not necessarily eliminate problems. It is a myth to think that by dividing up departments or ministries, problems will become smaller. Actually, often dividing up the organization leaves problems for others to clean up, or just moves the problems to other departments. See, dividing up the ministry can actually decrease leverage and make solving the problem even more difficult. See, often the solution is in the interaction between the two, not just focusing on one piece that we are now responsible for. The story is told of the three blind men touching the elephant, each holding a different part and thinking it is a completely different animal. Yet each has only a limited perspective. They're all touching the same animal. Finally, number 11, blaming never works. Leaders and churches that are on the road to dealing with problems in the ministries when they accept the fact that there's no one else to blame. Instead of blaming others for our problems, each party needs to see themselves as part of the single system. The solution is usually with those we are in opposition with. There's a bit of a whirlwind tour of Senge's 11 laws of a system. I know there's a lot there to digest. You may have to go over it again. But as you reflect on these in light of your own ministry, I'm sure you'll be able to relate to some or all of these. Understanding these dynamics can help us use a systems approach in dealing with organizational issues that affect our churches and our ministries. So as we wrap up this episode, let's look at the playbook for this section. To begin with, here are a couple questions to consider. Evaluate what some of the learning disabilities are of your church or ministry. What changes need to be made in order for your ministry to be a learning organization? Do you see any roots of decline in your church? Identify some of the wrong thinking you have engaged in as a group. And review the laws of a system with your team and identify how applicable they are to your particular setting and issues. Now, for each of the sections of this coaching series, we provide ministry team workshops which are designed to help anyone serving in the body apply these principles. For this section, the workshops are Developing Others 2, or Mentoring 201, and Team Building, which you can view in episodes 18 to 21. This is a follow-up to the principles of developing others through a mentoring relationship, as well as then how to develop effective teams. The goal is to reproduce healthy leaders who will then be able to build healthy teams and reproduce healthy ministries. Now, this is only an introductory episode to mentoring, so for the full workshop, check out my Mentoring Intelligence podcast series, which covers the content Developing Others 1 and Developing Others 2 workshop. There's also a link to our First Team podcast, which discusses principles of a healthy marriage relationship. See, various resources are also available in this section, including a vision assessment, a system analysis tool, as well as our extensive church health and effectiveness assessment. It is available in several languages and will be the basis for many of the workshops ahead. Our pathways of implementation this time includes instructions on how to administer the church health and effectiveness assessment within your church or organization, and the corresponding workshops, which are available as digital copies. I've also provided a guideline page which we have used to integrate the coaching sections in the workshops. The elliptical diagram explains the flow of the coaching sessions in the workshops and how they fit together. Now, the blue one illustrates how this material can be used within existing churches, and the brownish one for establishing new ministries. You can get links to all of these resources in the description box below. So in our next episode, we're going to wrap up this second section of the coaching guide by providing some helpful tools in becoming a church that is a learning organization. Remember, our goal is that we'll be more effective in fulfilling our vision and calling, truly being the hands and the feet of Jesus in this needy world.